Welcome to This Explainer. We're jumping straight into a deeply personal and, frankly, mind-bending story today. We're going to unpack how one family's incredibly complex, behind-closed-doors UFO mythology serves as a truly captivating case study of profound trauma and complicated grief. Seriously, this is a look at the absolute lengths the human mind will go to when reality just becomes entirely too painful to bear. Just listen to this quote from our source material, which immediately plunges us into this mother's reality-bending belief system. She genuinely believed her son, who had passed away prematurely, hadn't actually died. No, she believed he had been taken deliberately because he was a reincarnation of Thomas Edison and was now steering a spaceship with Jesus called the Foxfire. I know, it sounds literally like a sci-fi movie script, right? But for her and her surviving kids, this was the intense daily reality they were forced to navigate. Section 1, the Foxfire UFO mythology. So to really wrap our heads around this story and why it matters, we first need to map out the incredible, highly intricate belief system that totally dominated this family's home life. The mother constructed a massive theology, but she wasn't just pulling this out of thin air. She was absorbing the world around her. She blended 1970s hippie culture, yoga, and these concepts from the Theosophy Society, like the idea of ascended masters. She decided her son was a reincarnation of Thomas Edison, sitting on a cosmic council of 12 as the Lord of Electricity. And that spaceship, the Foxfire, it was actually named after a real glowing phosphorescent plant found in the Americas. This whole elaborate framework wasn't just a quirky hobby. It was specifically designed to elevate her family to a special, chosen status to mask a terrible, heartbreaking void. Section 2, a tragedy sparks a myth. Picture this. Back in 1969, the parents actually reported seeing a cigar-shaped object hovering over their house. Now, the older brother was a huge sci-fi fan. He loved movies like Alien and Close Encounters, and he was absolutely fascinated by this. He used to draw these elaborate flying saucers and propulsion systems all the time. Then tragedy struck, and he died prematurely. So the crucial takeaway here is what happened next. The grieving mother took that 1969 sighting, combined it with her young boy's innocent love for science fiction, and used them as the raw building blocks for an elaborate defense mechanism. She claimed she found his drawings of an alien alphabet and presented them as definitive, undeniable proof that he hadn't died, but had ascended. This unimaginable loss coalesced into a grandiose, looming mission for the entire family's future. Section 3, the 1992 Second Coming Prophecy. 1992? This single year just loomed incredibly large over those surviving kids. The mother boldly proclaimed that 1992 would bring the second coming. This was the exact year when her son would return to Earth, piloting the Foxfire. I mean, imagine being a teenager, right? You're just trying to navigate high school, puberty, normal adolescence, all while your mother frequently snaps into a mode where she waxes lyrical about your deceased brother returning on a glowing spaceship. It placed this immense, entirely warped sense of expectation and pressure on her kids. Section 4, living in a split reality. The absolute dissonance here is just wild. To the outside world, specifically her local church community, this mother was perceived as a totally normal, incredibly sweet, gentle Christian woman. Everyone thought she was just highly spiritual. But behind closed doors, she was pulling her children into a complete split reality. It was a hothouse of myths that radically broke away from any conventional orthodoxy. By forcing this sci-fi narrative 24/7, she completely siphoned out reality and effectively sanctioned her children's emotions, totally stripping away their ability to just normally and naturally grieve the loss of their brother. And this next detail really hits you. She literally burned his death certificate. This stark physical action reveals the absolute peak of her desperation. She wasn't just imagining a different world in her head. She was physically attempting to erase the factual, documented truth of her son's mortality from the real world. But, of course, decades passed, and the 1992 prophecy completely failed. The brother didn't return. And, actually, 1992 ended up being the exact year our source finally left home. Section 5, trauma, grief, and mental health. Looking back on all of this as an adult, our source views this not as some quirky family eccentricity, but as a severe mental health crisis. They highlight how events like this can closely resemble a psychotic break or schizoaffective disorder. You see, the mother had suffered what the narrator calls a psychic assault, which wasn't just the unimaginable death of her son, but also the violence of her husband. It was just too much for one mind to handle. And what's really vital to learn here is the clinical approach to delusions like this. Experts actually advise that the first line of response is empathetic listening, asking how they feel. If you directly negate the delusion, it can actually cause the person to spiral even further into it. To help us make sense of this, our source brings up a really powerful parallel from a book called Teat War. It's about a woman whose mother developed schizophrenia directly due to the severe environmental traumas of the Korean War. The connection here is profound. It perfectly mirrors how intense environmental stressors, trauma, and profound suffering can literally shatter a person's reality, generating severe mental health disorders. The UFOs, the Ascended Masters, the Foxfire, they were basically a psychological shield against a reality that was simply too violent and too deeply sad to live in. Ultimately, this explainer highlights a really crucial distinction, and this quote lays it out perfectly. It is one thing to search for spiritual meaning, right? To look up at the stars and wonder. But it is something entirely different to construct a fantastical, grandiose universe purely because the real one is too painful to look in the face. The mother's survival mechanism, while undeniably creative, unfortunately forced her kids into a really dark system of denial and fear. So, I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder today. Where is the line between searching for spiritual comfort and constructing a complete confabulation to escape an unbearable reality? It really makes you think about the fragile nature of the human mind when confronted with unimaginable grief and the incredibly complex, sometimes breathtakingly strange ways we try to survive it. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.